Alrighty, well, it is 7 o'clock in the morning on Monday, September the 9th, 2024. Rocky is sleeping there. There he is. I don't know what you can see because I got the phone turned around, but he's over there having a rest anyway. Um, Being a cat is tiring, There's a lot of cat-related activities that kind of take it out of you, especially when you're 80 years old like he is, because he's 16, which is 80 in cat years. So, you're 80 years old, you might need to take a nap occasionally, especially when you're an upwardly mobile cat like Rocky is. Yes, quite a cat, I'll tell you. Anyway, again, I want to talk about something that I find in my country of Canada drives me a little crazy. And it has to do, again, with cognitive dissonance, which seems to be a national sport here. And I'm going to use an example to illustrate what I mean. And the example I'm going to use is a situation that I'm aware of that occurred. There was a woman who I disassociated myself from a couple years ago because I found that my association with her wasn't good for me. And anyway, it has to do with her and her house and what was happening at her house and with our local police. And it's like this. She had a boarder living at her house, and the boarder was a drug dealer. Now this was a bit of a thing between me and her because I had encouraged her to get the boarder out of her house. Basically, she was saying she was leaving that kind of a life behind, was no longer interested in living the way she had lived, and yet she still had these connections, to that life. Had a person who was still living that life, living under her roof. And so my argument was, if you really want to do away with that part of your life, you can't cling to such a big part of it as to have this person living in your house. Anyway, she said, well, he's my friend, and where would he go if I evicted him? And so she wouldn't put him out. Now, what ended up happening, though, is because of the criminal activity that was happening in her house as a result of having this guy under her roof, she ended up, it ended up that the house became a problem in the neighborhood. There were people who were cutting across other people's backyards to get to the backyard of her house to make deals with the drug dealer because he was dealing out of her back shed. That's where he was conducting his business. There were incidents of theft. They were stealing stuff out of people's yards to trade to the drug dealer for drugs. And the thing is, if one of the neighbors happened to come out of their house or look out of their house and see somebody trespassing or see somebody stealing from them, see some crackhead stealing their lawnmower or whatever, if they went out and confronted them, they were often met with hostility, they were threatened, and so on. They get the middle finger, they get cussed at, they get told, get back in your house or I'll beat your face in, or whatever. And so they were calling the police, and the police were doing nothing. The police just weren't interested. Well, then, this woman that I knew, she started making Facebook Live videos in which she was ridiculing the police. Because in this town, where I am, or that's close to where I am, I'm in the country, but I'm close to this town. I'm like literally a couple miles outside of the town where I am right now. What's happened is there have been several men have disappeared. And one of them was found dead in a ditch. Never heard any more about that, so I don't know. I don't know exactly how he died or anything. I don't know if that information was ever released. But there have been a bunch of men that have gone missing, and a lot of them are connected to the drug community, I guess you could say. They have connections there with the drug trade, and they have addictions and so on, and they've gone missing. And other than that one was found dead in a ditch, the others have never been found. Anyway, she knew a few of these people personally, and she claimed to have some knowledge of what had happened to at least one of them. And she claimed to have went to the police with that information. And she claimed that the police were doing nothing. Well, on the surface of it, it certainly looked like they were doing nothing. Now, what they were doing or not doing, I don't know. I mean, they don't always say what they're doing, for obvious reasons. They can't really just say what they're doing a lot of the time. But anyway, she got frustrated, and because she's not an entirely rational person, she really isn't, she started making videos, Facebook Live videos, ridiculing the police. Now, bear in mind, her house had been a source of problems in the neighborhood for 2 years. She didn't start making but she started making these videos ridiculing the police. That was like in May of 2023. Well, in June of 2023, her door gets kicked in, and her house gets raided. Everybody in the house gets taken to jail. Her boarder, and the boarder's girlfriend, who was staying there with the boarder, all get taken to jail. Now, she wasn't criminally charged. She was released. The boarder and his girlfriend were criminally charged because the drugs and drug paraphernalia and everything else were found in their room where they were staying, so they got charged. But here's the thing. She was released, no charges, but she was told by one police officer while she was in custody that they weren't big fans of her videos, and that the raid had happened as a result of her making those videos in which she ridiculed them. Now, I take issue with it when things like this happen, and a lot of people don't understand why. Because they'll say, well, the police are only human. Sounds like she was antagonizing them, and so on like that. Well, yes, they are only human, I agree. And yes, she was antagonizing them. I agree with that too. However, whatever group in society can use their job to get back at somebody like that and there not be consequences, and whatever group in society can just not do their job and there not be consequences. I mean, look, if I was working in a restaurant, if I'm a waiter in a restaurant, and some people come in and sit down at a table, and I don't wait on them. I just hide in the back or whatever, and I don't come out and wait on them. And my boss says, hey, there's some people out there, I say, yeah, I know. Well, you might want to go out and see what they want. No, I can't be bothered. I'd lose my job. I couldn't do that. I'd lose my job, Likewise, if somebody came into the restaurant who I disliked, and maybe I've got good reason to dislike them, Maybe they have gone out of their way to antagonize me, and I have every reason in the world not to like those people. And any reasonable person would look at it and say, yeah, I understand why he doesn't like those people. Why he doesn't like that person. Let's say that's the scenario. And that pretty much is the scenario with this woman and the police. I mean, she gave them good reason not to like her. Honestly, she did. And look, I'm not a big fan of the police. I've had my own issues with them. I don't particularly like the police, but still, I'll acknowledge she pushed the envelope. She gave them good reason not to like her. And any human being is not going to like being publicly made fun of, being publicly ridiculed. Plus, the police tend to take themselves very seriously. There's a certain arrogance that goes along with policing, and so they'll take it even more personally than the average person might just laugh it off and say, "Oh well, she's an idiot anyway. Who cares? Who is she anyway? Who cares? Let her have her fun." But the police aren't like that generally. The police tend to, if you ridicule the police, they get, who are you to ridicule us? We're above you. We're so much better than you that you can't do that. We have to punish you for that. That tends to be the way the police are. So, you know, when she started making the videos, I remember I saw it coming. I thought, okay, she's going to get her door kicked in now. Sure enough, within a month, that's what happened. And they did acknowledge that it happened because of the videos. But here's the thing, if I'm going back to my scenario about the restaurant, I'm working in a restaurant, somebody comes in who I dislike, and anybody who knows the story wouldn't blame me. They'd say, yeah, I understand why he doesn't like that guy after what happened. But let's say then I decide to mess with their food. I decide to do something to their food. I adulterate their food somehow. I put something into their meal that shouldn't be there. And I get caught. There's nobody going to be saying, well, he's only human, and it's understandable that he doesn't like this person, and therefore it's okay that he adulterated their food. He shouldn't be held to account for that, and he should be allowed to continue working at the restaurant, and there should be no consequences to him, because after all, he didn't like that person, and he had good reason not to like them, so it's okay that he did that to their food. Well, no, I mean, people might say, well, he didn't like the person, and he had good reason. They might give me that. But they'd also say, but still, that's no excuse. He shouldn't have done what he did. He should not be allowed to work with food anymore. And he should be punished. He should face consequences for what he did. But with the police, no. Nope, after all, they're only human, and they have good reason not to like this person, so it's okay that they use their position, that they use the authority they have to get back at this person. Now, the raid itself should have happened. I think the raid needed to happen. I'm not disputing that. But the house was a problem for 2 years. The neighbors were complaining for 2 years, and nothing happened. And here's the thing. The police didn't care enough about the community to do something about it for 2 years. But then, when they personally are affected, when something happens that affects them, that they don't like, then they use the fact that the house has been a problem for 2 years to get back at this person. And that I don't like. And I think there should be consequences for doing things like that. I think that there should be consequences for them not doing their job for 2 years prior to that. When there was this issue, this was an issue in the neighborhood for 2 years, and they had all kinds of complaints. And see, here's what happens when the police don't do their job. Because what ends up happening is crime begets crime. And what I mean by that is crime multiplies. It's like, look, Steve Crime, he marries Felicity Felony. And they have little criminal children. Basically, crime multiplies, What happens is you end up then, too, with people, pardon me, with people who aren't normally criminals who will become criminals. Now, you take these neighbors that have been so frustrated with crackheads coming onto their property, trespassing, doing damage, stealing stuff from them. They've confronted the crackheads. They've been threatened.